Welcome everybody, Mike Rondo here, and I got a bit of a setup here. I got the camera up higher. I got my light on a tripod here. I think the light works better maybe like that, but it's down below, so I'm kind of lit. I don't know, maybe this way. I don't know. I got to work on this. We'll see when I look at the video later. But anyway, tonight we're going to talk about this: 12 Nights at Rotterhouse. And this was a book, so there'll be mild spoilers, not, well, maybe there'll be big spoilers. I don't know. Just be on guard. If you haven't read this, be warned, I guess. But I will say this. If you haven't read it, I suggest you go read it, then come back. Because this is a great book. Oh, I wouldn't say great. It's a fun book. It's a kind of a good forget the world kind of book. You get kind of engrossed in this. I got this last Tuesday. I was done with it Saturday. One of the quickest reads. It's not a it's a pretty fast read if you ask me. It's 272 pages. More or less 72, 73. And pretty good read. It's a fun read. It's the author J.W. I want to say the name right. Ocker. I don't know. It's right there. If the author is watching JW, I apologize if I butchered your name. I know you're in. You live in New Hampshire now, so that's pretty cool. He's a New Englander, so right off the bat, I like it. So this is, if you know anything about the channel, you've been to my channel last fall, my first year of YouTube. I did basically celebrated Halloween in a way. And haunted houses and things are kind of a thing. Like a haunted house book, I'm kind of a sucker for. A haunted house movie, I'm kind of a sucker for. And I got this. I was a little apprehensive because sometimes they can be kind of, you know. Take a swig here. So I got this. I started reading it. When I first started reading it, the first chapter was kind of, I don't know, the tone was a little goofy to me, and then we got into the second chapter, which kind of clears things up, and then going forward things made sense. It progressed pretty quickly. Well, I'll say this, the pop culture references, now they can be overdone and overplayed. You know, I guess the best book to handle it was Ready Player One, but this does it in a way that's not annoying. It fits with it, and the main character, and I kind of feel bad for even saying this now because I related to the main character. Like, I latched onto him with his humor and his looking at things, and he's a skeptic and so I kind of latched onto him. Of course, at the end of the book, you're kind of like, well, I really don't want to relate to the guy, but I thought that was a great. His use of pop culture was really good. And then now the one thing that seemed very weird to me, and it kind of makes sense later on in the book, was his friend showing up on day 2, I believe it was, or day 3. I think it was day 2. And they're kind of exploring the haunted house together. What the story basically is a guy, he's a travel writer. He goes to spooky places and he writes about them. And Rotterdam House is a haunted mansion. And he wants to write about it. He wants to stay in there for 13 nights, which, again, the title, as I said in my last video, or not my last one, the one before that, when I was talking about my book haul. Yeah, it was my last video. Where the title, as you're reading it, and you start reading the first 2 pages, the first chapter and the second chapter, yeah, you start to say, well, wait a minute, the book says 12, and you want to stay for 13. So you knew right from there things were going to go awry. And as you're reading it, you're like, okay, when's the shoe gonna drop? When's things, you know, as you're getting closer and closer to the 13th night, right? And it never comes. But anyway, back to his friend. Him and his friend had this great dynamic. Has their, you know, going back and forth with their pop culture references. You know, very much a Gen X. I assume this gentleman who wrote the book is a Gen Xer because all the references are things that us growing up in the 80s and 70s and 90s would have gotten. very easily, and it's very Gen X kind of humor. So if you're like me and you're a Gen Xer, this is up your alley. The dialogue, the way they speak. Another swig. And as you're going, now I've seen a few other reviews where people were talking that they said the ending was a complete surprise. I don't think so. I saw one other person do a review on it, and she'd pointed out I could kind of see this coming. And she's kind of right. When you read the title of this and you realize he wanted to stay for 13 nights, and then as you go on with the dynamic of the characters, with his friend, the ghost, so to speak, the ghost, and the things that are happening in the house and whatnot, you know the shoe was going to drop, right? And there's some turmoil with the friends and that, and you knew there was, as you're reading, you're like, okay, well, got a bug. You're supposed to be here 13 nights, but it only says 12, and as you're reading along, you only know there's really two characters that are in the book, the friend and the main character, and you're like, well, this isn't going to end very well. So it was no surprise. Then when you find out what the problem was, like the reason they didn't speak to each other and whatnot, it was pretty predictable. I want to say it's a predictable book, but in a good way. It was fun, took your mind off things, and again, it's a quick read. It was a pleasure to read. I enjoyed it. I kept going back to it. Normally, I take several books, as I got right now, and jump in and out. Like, I'll read a few chapters here, jump over to another one, read several chapters there, and kind of go mishmash. This one, I'm happy to say, was one of those books that kind of sucked me in, and I kind of just went with it. I didn't read any of the other new books, as you saw in my last video. I got several of them, and I didn't jump into any of those until after I was done with this. So this book I was done. So I recommend this. The ending kind of, a few days later after you finish reading it, and you're like, okay, you question if you were actually at the haunted house or at his house, and did this happen at his house? Was all this stuff in his mind, and it happened, and did it really happen in 13 days, or was it overnight? Like, it kind of screws with your mind. Like, you read it initially, you're like, oh, all right, you know, they were in the haunted house, this happens, this is what happens at the end, police are involved and stuff, and you're like, oh, it was there. But then when the character's walking out and the police are involved, I don't want to spoil too much of it, and there are people around, you're like, they weren't that isolated, so maybe it was at that person's house or that character's house and not so much in this fictitious haunted house. Maybe it wasn't real. I don't know, it's kind of trippy because it made me think about it a few days after, which I liked. It's one of those, you read it, you ponder it, you're like, oh, that was predictable, it was enjoyable, it was pleasant, I enjoyed it, it was great, I recommend the book. But then you're sitting there, come out of the shower, you brush your teeth, and you're sitting there and it pops in your head, and you're like, now wait a minute. You're kind of going back and analyzing the book in your head. And I don't do that often with a lot of books, but I did it with this one, where you're kind of trying to piece together that puzzle at the end there that the author was trying to express. And that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. So I highly recommend this book. It's definitely a book you want to get if you're heading into the Halloween season. It's worth a try. It's not like horror in the sense, like, you know, blood and guts and things. It's actually pretty tame on that stuff. It's very much an interesting concept, as like if you're trying to like ghost hunt, or if you're trying to explain the paranormal or whatever, and you're trying to reason it away, and you know, it's a very good even keel kind of spook yourself. I guess that's what it is. It's really more of like when we go out checking things, like when I was out investigating the Nellie Vaughan grave site. You know, like I said in that video, it's very peaceful there, quiet. You know, there's nothing spooky about it. There's no vibe or anything like that. But when you dim the lights, right, you go down to dusk, and it's around Halloween. It's maybe on a Friday the 13th. You've drank a little. The real ghosts and demons and monsters are in our mind, and all these things that we're kind of hearing in our head and imagining, like, this sound is making this, but it's really something simple. Like, you know, it's an old creaky house, but we're thinking it's a ghost running around and all that stuff. So I liked how it kind of showed that, we're just freaking ourselves out. But then, you get to the end and you realize what happens, and it's predictable, but you knew it was going to go there. But it was, again, you're going back a few days later trying to piece together, were they here, there, or what was kind of real, what wasn't real, and it kind of leaves you up to your interpretation of it. But anyway, that's my review of 12 Nights at Rada House. Very good. I recommend it. You guys should check it out. It's in my library. I'll read this again. Probably, it depends where I am with these books. I might read it again this year, or definitely next year I'll read it around Halloween. The next up is this one, The Whisper Man. I just started this one. I'm on chapter 4. I just started chapter 4 the other day. Kind of took a little break from reading, and then I just got this one today, the guest list, which I mentioned the other day. So I'm sorry if the lighting is still kind of horrible, right? It's not to play around with this stuff. But in any case, I'm still waiting for the Alienist. My book has not arrived. I don't know what the problem is, but in any case, that's going to do it for this video. Check it out. Enjoy it. Let me know what you guys think about the book if you do read it. And I know Mark and R.I. was very curious about this book. It's not spooky, haunted type of thing. It's more of a... I'd say it's more of a thriller slash crime in the end, so to speak. I'll leave it at that. But don't think like, well, it's interesting. Just read the damn thing. Anyway, I'm out of here. I hope you guys had a great day. I'll catch you later.